Hey everybody, gonna try doing another little bitty tutorial. Um, I guess the ones that people seem to like the most are, I've been posting tutorials and little time lapses, and people seem to just really like watching the tutorials more. I totally understand that. This is a head that I actually sculpted couple of years ago probably and found it in a file, and I still like the general shape and look of it. Um, yeah, I do that a lot. I just sit around and doodle and sculpt heads, and then they just sit there and do nothing. This one, I thought the tutorial I'm going to do today, I'm just going to make some neat fantasy horns on this woman. So it's pretty basic. The way I don't use a lot of the stuff in ZBrush. I keep everything fairly basic. First thing I'm going to do is come up here to Curve Tube, and I've got a symmetry on. So say I draw these out. Oh, hold on. Let me come down here. It's a lot of what we're going to be dealing with the curved tube is under stroke, and come down here to, let's see, it's under curve modifiers and size, and see if I have the size off, they're going to be just tubes. Oh, hold on, I've actually got this all over the place. Show you how this all works. Undo those. Okay, so when you first start using the curved tube, it's going to be a tube, just actually round, and you adjust the thickness of it under draw size. And if I wanted it to be a little bit more flat under Z intensity, you can, if you come down and then click on it again, you see you'll end up with a sort of oval shape. Not what I want right now, so we're going to leave it at that. And then I want to really mess with, let me undo this. I want to mess with the shape of it, not just have it be a tube. So I'm going to come over here under stroke, and under curve modifiers, you want to click on size, and then you can sort of mess with the shape of what your tube is going to look like. See, it gives you a little bit of a variation there. Yeah, and see, we're going to sculpt on this a lot, so it's not that important. It's just nice to begin with something that's not real even looking. And you can sort of push and pull a little bit before. And then when you've got it about where you want it and you want to lock it into place, you just click on the mesh somewhere else, and now you can't screw with that anymore. So I'm gonna, right now the horns are still part of the head, so I'm gonna come down here under subtool, and I'm gonna hit split masked points, and so that's still masked from where we put in the horns. So we're going to hit split mask points, and now the horns are a subtool on their own. And really, most of what I do is pretty basic. Just going to move it around till it looks about right. Might actually scale them up a little bit. Okay, and then, right now this is a good spot to have them in, so I'm going to come down here and under geometry, Dynamesh. Now I just turn the blur down to 0 and go ahead and turn groups on just in case I add other parts and I want to keep them separate. And then hit Dynamesh, and that took our resolution, gave us, it's up to 10,000 points. And then just a real quick way to get rid of all the lines without dividing first. Come up to polish by groups, like the big circle, and then just drag a little bit. And polish by groups is usually down here under deformation. I've got it in a special folder because I use it a lot. But yeah, it's right there. Okay, and now at this point we are good to start sculpting on it. And like I said, I use really basic brushes most of the time. Like here, I'll use clay buildup. I use a lot. And yeah, the resolution's still real crappy. I have not added enough for real, getting real detail on there. But at this point, I really just want to sort of rough things out quickly. And another thing that's sort of important to do, like if you watch, let's see, especially on things like if you're working on something that's thin like this, you want to make sure you got back face mask on, because if you don't, it's going to do that where it's pulling the back side of the mask or the back side of the mesh towards it. But if you have back face mask on, it's not going to do that. And then I'll, as I'm roughing out here, it's still really, really rough. Every now and then I'll go ahead and you just hold in control and then drag off and it'll Dynamesh again to sort of even out the mesh somewhat. Yeah, and doing stuff like this, you always want to constantly be turning it to see, because like you can see it's like from here, hey, that looks pretty good, and then from here, it's odd. It's not got good curves to it, so you want to be turning things constantly. To see where you're at. And then, it's pretty quickly becoming apparent that I need more resolution on this to be able to really do much anything. So I'm going to come back over here and under Dynamesh, just up the resolution a good amount. Drag off. Now it's 93. I'm going to have to go higher than that at some point. I just sort of gradually work my way up. And here I'm just smoothing, just a real quick smooth, holding down the shift key. Yeah, and you can use, it doesn't really matter what brushes you're using a lot of the time. I've got this cloth wrinkle that I made a long time ago. I think I based it off the clay buildup. And it just, turn the lazy mouse off. It just, I made it smoother, so it's a lot more organic looking. Just holding in, what do you call it, Alt, to get sort of a negative. And I'm just making this up as I go along. It's sort of relaxing. As I'm going along, I'm sort of jiggling my hand to give it that little bit of weird bumpiness to it. Yeah, this is sort of the goal now, is to do nothing but this kind of stuff. I used to work in the toy industry and really don't do that a lot anymore. And it just wasn't as much fun as it used to be back in the old days. And just doing designs like this is so much more fun and so much more relaxing. And hopefully, you know, people are actually getting something out of the videos. And I always try to, you know, I'm like turning things the whole time so that I can see where good, interesting curves need to go. You know, started out sculpting in clay. And, you know, when you're working with something you're holding in your hand, you're constantly turning it, so it's a lot easier to do that. And this you have to sort of consciously remember, because you can easily just stare at something and keep working from the same angle for a long time and then realize that from another angle it looks really, really bad. Yeah, this is right here is one of the most fun and interesting things, to me at least, is just this, that finding the interesting curves and forms and whatnot. Just smoothing that out a little bit. Yeah, this is so not work when I'm doing this. Like this is close to just being meditation or something like that. And hopefully you folks out there watching this are actually, you know, learning something, or at least enjoying just the ramblings. Yeah, and like I said before, I am using so few brushes. I mean, I watch some of these videos where these guys are showing all the stuff they do, and it's neat. And I enjoy watching it. And every now and then you'll see something new that you really want to incorporate, you know, like really change how you do stuff. But 99% of the time I am doing my own thing with just a couple of main brushes. want to do, I do this sometimes where I will get so focused on doing stuff really close up, and then I'll back out and go, well, that was all wrong. So you definitely want to not just be turning, you want to be zooming in and out a lot. Make sure it fits with what you're doing. Yeah, see, I'm liking this. Looks good so far. This bothers me on some level. I don't know why. Right there just needs something. Yeah. I try to keep away from ever having any straight lines in anything because, I don't know, I guess I saw or read somewhere a long time ago that there are very few perfectly straight lines in nature. Or it's just more interesting to have curves everywhere. And I'm going to come up here and grab the cloth wrinkle brush again. And here's something else. I like doing this while I'm doing this sort of thing. Come up to alpha, and then under modify, you've got where it says H tiles, and that's horizontal. And I'll set that to 2. And you notice what it did under the alpha? It sort of split it into 2. And now I want to put some little wrinkles in here. Yeah, and I'm also going to go ahead and Dynamish. I'm going to up it quite a bit because I want to have a lot more detail here. But yeah, I like upping the alpha to 2 and then just playing around with it. These little squiggles in there, and I'm changing this. Oops, a little bit too big. Changing the size a little bit as I get further down. You can hold in Alt and do some negative ones too to vary it. And this is just, I mean, God, this is just so much fun doing this. Like, I cannot explain how much I enjoy just doing this sort of stuff. Yeah, this is absolutely the most, and right here I'm just doodling, just to fill in the area to give it some neat texture. It's like no right or wrong, you just do whatever. Here, I'm going to go ahead and turn the tile back down to 1 so I can actually sculpt a little bit more. But yeah, this is so much more relaxing than a lot of what I've done in the past. It's not bad. And I don't use a lot of patterns to add little detail. Instead, I'll do stuff like, well, I shouldn't say I don't. I like to use just random patterns to get just different sorts of things. Like grab that and maybe just sort of playing around here. So we've got two, and then change the stroke, because if I leave it like it is, we're going to get, oh, hold on, set that. I had it set to just color. That's all right. It's not bad. It's not really what I want. Erase those. Come up here to stroke and hit spray. And this is just to add a little bit of surface detail. Not even worrying too much about where it's going. I just want to add something that we can have underneath there. And come back up here. Go ahead and turn that down to 1 again. And then I've got a couple of brushes I really like that I've gotten. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and load this one up. These are like really great brushes that I got from Pablo Gomez. Let's see. This one's really good. This one will give you sort of a deep, say a deep sort of sharp cut. Turn the intensity down a little bit. But yeah, I love this brush. You can find brushes all over online. But yeah, Pablo's brushes are really good. This is one that I use a lot. Yeah, I can use it for stuff like, it helps a lot if you're doing your own wrinkles, like individual wrinkles or cracks or things like that. And I don't worry about, I'm not trying to make these look in any way like realistic horns. I'm just having fun with adding detail wherever I want it to be. And like down here, this looks like somewhere that it would look good to have. These are just real basic alphas that come with ZBrush. Like you can grab that and then come back over here to change the stroke to drag rectangle. Some little knobby looking things on there. And there are thousands of things you can do in ZBrush, other brushes and all kinds of stuff. But 99% of the time, this is what I'm doing, is I just want to sculpt. Just adding a little bit of a tiny bit of detail there, and I'm going to smooth it just a tiny bit. Yeah, and you don't want to end up doing like so much, like this amount of little detail here. You don't want it to cover every last inch of it, because then you don't really have a focal point. I'm leaving, this is fairly smooth back here, and compared to here, this is, I'm smoothing it a little bit as I'm saying it. This is a little bit smoother of an area, so you want to vary the density of the detail too as you're working. Oops. And then just want to mess with this a little bit. But yeah, and then might want to add a little bit of color just for fun. I mean, not like anything super detailed. I'm gonna just pick a color and make sure RGB is set, and then I'm going to come up here to color and just hit fill object, and that filled it with that color. And you can set the intensity, and if you set the RGB intensity, it'll fill it like to a degree, like a percentage. Let's see. Undo that. So I set it down to 39% and then color. And see, it kept the underlying gray and then added this to it, which is actually not bad looking. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to use texture color brush. Yet again, this is one that I made based off a tutorial that I watched of Pablo Munoz Gomez's stuff. And it was really, really helpful. I'm going to turn the RGB down and just sort of color in a little bit of this lighter. A little bit more of a yellowish. Yeah, and then a quick way to just add a little bit of depth. I mean, one, you can come over to render, and this just for your own eye helps. Where is it? If you hit preview ambient occlusion, it'll add some shading there. Sort of neat. But if you actually want to add the color to the mesh, you can come down to mask. I do this quite a bit. Mask by cavity. And then you can set the intensity to get, whichever depth of your mesh you want to get. And then I will usually come up here and blur it. And then you want to hit inverse, and now it's just little cracks and things. I usually turn view mask off just so I can see what I'm doing better. And then we'll come over to standard, turn alpha off, and make sure we've got RGB but not add on. And then down a little bit. And then you can see it's sort of, it's hitting the cracks and the little areas that have a little bit of depth to them. But yeah, that's just some neat little horns that you can do for a creature or character or whatever. And a lot of the time it's, I'll go ahead and do this real quick. I was going to end here, but let me show you real quick. And once you've got them, I mean, it's like, just duplicate them, can turn them off, and I'm just centering on the mesh. You can, oops, and you see that happen because I still have the mask on. So when I expanded it, it expanded only the parts that are not masked. So it sort of made a mess. Actually, doesn't look too bad. It would be hard to print something like that, but it's sort of neat looking. Not what I meant to do though. So I'm going to clear my mask. But what I was going to say, you can change the scale real quick, move them around. I mean, you can go into the gizmo and deform them in 50 different ways if you want, and curve them and whatnot. Or you can just grab move. And the beautiful thing about doing all this digitally and not in clay is that the original is still just right there, intact. You can go back and compare. So this is so much, this is one of the most fun parts of ZBrush. I mean, good Lord. Yeah, I'm not even really sculpting anything new. I am just all new horns. And it's like, got those. You can have both. You can move these down a little bit. Turn them around to the side. Yeah, it's just so much fun. It's sort of incredible. But yeah. I'm doing the same thing where I need to feel like the curves are all interesting from every angle. But yeah, that's a little tutorial on sculpting fantasy horns. Hope you guys enjoyed it, got something out of it.